Last weekend I woke up with something I hadn't experienced in a long time. My back was really stiff, and not just a little bit stiff, it had that familiar feeling where you get out of bed and your body doesn't quite want to cooperate yet. It took about an hour before it loosened up, and strangely, I wasn't worried. That might not sound particularly interesting, I get it, but for someone who used to have persistent back pain, it actually says quite a lot. Because years ago, if I'd woken up with that exact same sensation, I would have reacted completely differently. I would have started worrying about what I'd done. I'd probably have spent 20 minutes stretching, doing mobility work and trying to get rid of the feeling as quickly as possible. But this time, I just got on with my day. So here's the question I want to explore today. How can the same feeling in your back be terrifying at one point in your life and almost irrelevant in another? And I don't think the answer is simply that I found the perfect stretch. I think something much more important changed. I was camping in Pembrokeshire at the weekend, and if you've never been, it's one of my favourite places to go. We had incredible weather, the sea was crystal clear, and we were out paddleboarding loads, swimming, just messing around in the water. It was absolutely brilliant. It was exactly what I want from a nice weekend away. And then there was the sleeping arrangement, an inflatable mattress. Now, I've never really got on with inflatable mattresses, to be quite honest. They're comfortable for about 5 minutes, and then I just spend the night feeling like I'm floating around on a waterbed. So after a couple of nights, my back was pretty sore. And on the second morning, I woke up super stiff, and I immediately recognised that sensation that I've felt this before. It was years ago. Mornings like that were just part of my normal life. But this time, something really interesting happened. I didn't interpret the stiffness as a threat. I didn't think, what's happened to my back? I didn't think, I need to fix this right now. I just thought, well, yeah, my back's not particularly happy this morning because I've been on the airbed. And I just gave it some time. Eventually, it then loosened up and I just carried on with my day as normal. Nothing dramatic happened at all. I didn't need an emergency intervention. I didn't need to spend an hour trying to manipulate my spine back into place. It just settled back. And that got me thinking about how differently I used to respond. Now, you could look at this story and say, well, obviously the mattress caused the problem. And there's some truth in that, okay? A mattress can absolutely affect comfort and sleep. Research looking at different mattress designs has found that mattress characteristics can influence things like sleep quality, pain, and spinal comfort, although the evidence doesn't point towards one universal, like perfect mattress. So I'm not here to tell you your mattress doesn't matter. If your mattress is awful, changing it might be a pretty sensible thing to do. But here's where I think that explanation falls a bit short. Because what happens when you don't have the perfect sleeping environment? What happens when you're camping? Or you're on a long haul flight, or you're on a really long car journey, or you spent the day walking around a city. Or maybe you've done a workout that's harder than usual. Or you've just simply had a terrible night's sleep just generally. You can't optimize every position you're going to be in for the rest of your life. And yet we're often encouraged to think about our backs as if we can. We need the perfect chair, the perfect desk setup. Have we got the perfect posture? Do we have the perfect mattress? And if we don't have those things, maybe our back is going to suffer. But there's another possibility that runs alongside this. Maybe part of the solution isn't creating life where your back is never challenged. Maybe it's creating a back that can handle being challenged. This is where my own experience becomes really interesting. Because my back didn't become a magical machine that never gets sore. It still gets sore. I train, I do big hikes, I paddleboard, I love to climb, maybe I'm on a long haul flight to travel. I do things that sometimes push me towards the limits of what I'm capable of or comfortable with. And when you push your body towards those current limits, sometimes you're going to feel something. It will be fatigue, it will be stiffness, it might be discomfort. That doesn't automatically mean something has gone wrong. What changed was my capacity and my confidence within that capacity. So I've spent years building a much stronger foundation. I've exposed myself to different movements, different loads, different environments, different challenges, and over time I've learned my back can deal with a lot, and that changes what happens when it doesn't feel perfect. I'm not saying that physical capacity makes you immune to pain. It doesn't, okay? And I'm not saying every episode of back pain should simply be ignored. It shouldn't. But there is an important difference between having a body that has been trained to deal with different demands and having a body that you've spent years trying to protect from every possible demand. And that brings us to something researchers have been interested in for decades: fear and avoidance. Imagine you wake up and your back hurts. You don't really know why. Well, that uncertainty creates a question. Well, is this bad? Then maybe you remember the last time you hurt your back, or something somebody told you about posture, or maybe that time you bent over and felt something that wasn't right. So the sensation starts to actually mean something. Pain becomes something might be wrong. And if you believe something is wrong, the natural response is to protect yourself. You move a bit more carefully, you avoid certain positions, you're gonna need to feel like you wanna stretch, you check how your back's feeling all the time, you test it, then you try to make the sensation disappear. And when one of those things gives you some relief, it can be incredibly reassuring. That's actually very understandable. It's exactly what I was doing years ago. The stretching wasn't necessarily just about my muscles. It was giving me reassurance. It was telling me things like, I can make this feel better, maybe I'm going to be all right. And there's a substantial body of research examining fear avoidance beliefs in relation to pain and disability. Higher fear avoidance beliefs have been associated with poorer outcomes in some groups, particularly in earlier stage low back pain. The relationship, though, isn't universal and becomes more complicated with persistent pains. Exercise can also help reduce fear avoidance, although the certainty of that evidence is a bit limited. So the answer isn't just stop stretching, and it's not ignore your pain. It's something way more nuanced. What if you gradually build enough capacity and understanding that you don't need to make every sensation disappear before you feel safe? I think this is one of the biggest things that changed for me. I stopped making the absence of discomfort the goal, and actually the goal became capability. Can I move? Can I load my body? Can I adapt to new situations? Can I recover well? Can I do things that I really enjoy? And importantly, can I trust my body even when it doesn't feel perfect? Because if your only measure of success is my back feels completely fine today, you have a real problem, because backs aren't machines and our bodies fluctuate. So if you sleep badly, or you get stressed, or you do too much, you do something new, or you get really tired because you spent 2 nights sleeping on an inflatable mattress in Pembrokeshire, sometimes your body says that just really wasn't great. And that's okay. The goal isn't to eliminate every single signal. It's to understand what those signals might mean and build the physical and psychological capacity to respond appropriately. And that's where I think recovery becomes much more interesting, because you're not just trying to build a stronger back, you're building trust. Think back to the 2 versions of myself. Old me wakes up stiff, thinks, what's happened? Why is my back like this today? I'm gonna have to loosen it off. Why isn't it going away? I need to do more of that loosening. Whereas new me just wakes up stiff and goes, yeah, I've probably pushed things a little bit. I know my back can handle this though, so I'll just give it a little bit of time. And then I get on with my day. The sensation isn't necessarily that different, but the meaning I've attached to it really is, and I think that's an important distinction for anyone dealing with recurring back pain. You don't necessarily need to create a world where your back is never uncomfortable, but you do need to gradually build a body and level of confidence that allows you to live in a world where it sometimes is, because you can't control every mattress. You can't control every chair, you can't control every journey, you can't control every night's sleep. And you certainly can't control every sensation your body is going to produce, but you can work on your capacity. You can expose yourself to movement. You can build strength. You can learn what your body is actually capable of. And over time, then you can start to replace I need to protect my back with I know my back can adapt to this. So ironically, the thing that reminded me of my back pain wasn't some huge physical challenge. It was an inflatable mattress. 2 uncomfortable nights were enough to remind me exactly what those mornings used to feel like. But they also showed me something I'd probably forgotten. A capable back isn't a back that never complains. It's a back that can be challenged, become uncomfortable, recover, and then just get on with it. And perhaps more importantly, it's a back you can trust when it does feel uncomfortable. That was something I didn't have when I first started dealing with back pain, and it's something I now think is just as important as strength, mobility, or any other exercise. Not because you should just ignore the pain, but because the goal of recovery shouldn't be to make your world smaller and smaller until your back never gets uncomfortable. It should be to make your capacity bigger and bigger so that you can go camping, you can sleep on the terrible airbed, you can wake up stiff and still go paddleboarding and have an epic weekend.